Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Bite-Sized Branding live show. I am super excited for this show. I've been trying to line it up for ages, but it's hard to get these popular people all in the same room. So I just gave up on the whole room idea and just got them on a live stream. Isn't that? It's way easier that way, right? Everyone, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, I'm joined by Grant, who is now over this side. But we have two amazing guests with us, Carrington from Agenda C and Sophie from Maven PR. We're doing a PR blitz today. I wanted to get the two specialists, probably the two best people that I know in the industry. And if anyone knows anyone better, you're wrong. You just haven't met these two. That's and the reason I wanted to get them in on the same show is because they both have different aspects to where they tailor to in the PR space. So I wanted to see, bring their two different approaches together, or not different approaches, more like different industry niches together to see, what's the PR mix? How does it work? Does it differ where you go with PR? Now I'm going to stop talking because, I should put on a timer for my intro today. And I'm going to kick it over to Grant. Grant, give everyone an idea of how the show is going to break down.
Hi, everyone. Well, my name's Thom, and I'm known as the Head Firestarter within the marketing and advertising industry. What that means is that I like to start ideas, I like to generate ideas, and I like to get businesses to grow and scale. And therefore, talking about PR and public relations is one of the most key fundamental strategies that I always utilize when coming to growing businesses in the communication message. So I think we're in for a bumper show. What we normally do is we'll normally have 5 minutes where we have to debate a subject with the view to unravel. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to get your elbows up because right now it's going to get competitive because now we've got 4 people talking at the same time. So we've given ourselves 2 extra minutes just to make sure we get all extra value and that everyone gets a chance to speak. So over to you, Bernard. I look forward to seeing what's going to come out of the show.
Grant, mate, I think that's the most hyped up intro I've ever heard you do. I thought I was just in in a boxing match. Let's get ready to rumble.
Oh, you got it.
Awesome. Well, I'll introduce our two special guests. They're just waiting patiently down there and giggling at us as we stupidly make comments. I'll kick off with Carrington. Carrington, mate, please give everyone a little bit of intro about you and Agenda C.
So my name is Carrington Brigham, and I am co-founder and managing director of campaigns at Agenda C. C stands for campaigns, communications, content, crisis, and creative. So all the powerful tools and services in which our clients need for a good public relations campaign. We formed a little over 2 years ago now, and we are specialising basically in campaigns that feature all of those facets to help service different advocacy groups, membership organisations, B2B brands and consumer brands. We also specialise with government clients and departments as well. So those are our services, and we offer a holistic solution, a full end solution to any challenges that clients have.
Mate, you are the end. Like when somebody gets there, they don't have to keep looking anymore. It's the end, they're done. Their search is over. Thanks, Carrington. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us today. Sophie, please kick off. Tell everyone a little bit more about you.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Sophie Muir and I'm the founder of Maven PR. We've been around for about 3 years now. Our specialty is very different to Carrington's. We focus very much in the consumer PR space. So we work with a lot of FMCG clients, beauty brands, health and travel brands as well. You'll see behind me a few of my clients are just sitting on the bench. So in terms of this,
is that part of the health brands or?
Oh yeah, that's the health and beauty right there.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and in terms of the types of services that we offer clients, everything from traditional publicity to influencer marketing, content creation, event management, and kind of overall creative campaign development for PR.
Oh my God.
And crisis management if it's needed.
The old crisis management, isn't that everyone's favorite part of PR?
It was certainly great
Jared,
for us.
Malaysia Airlines.
Malaysia Airlines, yes.
Yeah. Awesome,
it was crisis one after another.
I think what's phenomenal, like something that just came up just then, is both your brands are very new. And I think, and we have a question about this, it's going to come up a little bit later on, but there is that kind of perspective to whether or not PR is still a relevant game to dabble in. So I'm really excited to unravel that because, you know, with two fresh businesses in there doing something a bit different, I'm really excited to kind of unbundle that more. And in saying that, I think it's time to get into some questions. Yeah? Is everyone ready to go?
Let's do it.
You want to grab a bottle, Soph? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll do a short question.
Every time somebody says question, you take a shot. No, awesome, guys. So look, the first question we had was all about when is the right time to get into PR. I think a lot of people find it kind of challenging to determine, okay, where is the best place to put my spend in the whole sphere of marketing, whether it's digital, traditional, etc. What is it? Is it crisis? Is it launching a new product? Is it an exposure game? Is it for brand recognition? Where's the best place or the best time necessarily for people to put put an investment into the PR game? You all ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Don't get started before the timer, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I can't actually see the button, so no, that did not work.
Okay, you've taken us down to 2 minutes.
I said, hurry up. There we go. Awesome. Cool. Jump in. Who's ready to get started?
I'll go first.
Ladies first.
Okay. I mean, I guess the answer I would give that question is I think you should always be investing in PR. PR is a great way to maintain brand awareness. And, you know, if you don't have any new news or you're not launching a new product, a good PR agency can help you come up with creative ways to create a news hook. For example, at Maven, we're a big fan of brand collaborations between our clients. We recently did something where we paired up Stylish Hound, which is a doggy accessory company, with our clients at Camplify, and we created Australia's most dog-friendly caravans. So again, like they didn't have a new product to launch, so we just sort of created some news, used some data around like trends around people traveling with dogs in Australia. And that worked really well for PR. But then, of course, if you are launching a new product, then absolutely you should be investing in PR. When your product is new, that is the most newsworthy it's ever going to be. And then I guess in terms of crisis, I think you need to be really strategic about that. Like, you know, if there's been a negative situation, obviously it's important to kind of put out a statement to the relevant media based on what's happened, explaining the situation and kind of bringing it back to the key messages of the brand. But it's also really important to be mindful of what other PR you're doing at that time. You know, you don't want to look distasteful by, you know, as I said before, I worked on Malaysia Airlines, and we would basically go dark during periods where there were big situations with MH370. We just supply statements as requested. So I think it's really important to sort of be strategic about when you're doing PR if there is a crisis.
And do you think that's like hurtful to the reputation of a brand? Like I've worked with car brands in the past, and when they kind of go silent, everybody starts to get a little bit sus about what's going on. When I say
go silent, I just mean like, you know, you've got to consider, obviously send out like a statement about the situation itself and respond to media requests for comment, of course. But I mean, you don't want to be promoting something if for a car brand, for example, you don't want to be promoting a brand new car and saying, look at this amazing new car, but then there's been a series of accidents in another model or something like that. You've just got to be a bit mindful.
Yeah, you don't want to look unsympathetic to
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Carrington.
So if we speak to the question, when is the best time to do PR? Well, I would probably agree with Sophie. It's always. That's why we trade the word always on in our industry. But a lot of the time we see some brands and organisations come to us after they've launched things. And that can be really challenging because it's not new anymore. And we have to then sort of really deep dive into what is it about them that has a unique story that differentiates them from any other competitor or brand or something that's already been done before. I often see quite a lot product ideas for B2B, where it's already been done before. And a lot of the times, desktop research, very easily you can find things in the past where something hasn't worked, like an app or something like that. And so we really have to find what's unique then. If this is a new app that's trying to tell a story in a different way, what is it about that story that might not have been told yet? And so it could be something along the lines of, is it purpose-driven marketing? So they're creating an app to deliver a product, but is there a purpose behind it that gives back to the community in a wider sense? That's just one angle you could think of. So yes, there's always an ample opportunity for PR. PR really is 90% strategy and 10% implementation. It's not something that should be taken lightly. I've often seen over the last 10 years of working in the industry that advertising gets favoured. Marketing research advertising gets favoured over PR. And a lot of the time, we will see things in the press where the messaging is really mixed, or I don't understand why they didn't have better messaging. And that's usually due to the fact that they didn't hire a good PR agency, or they didn't do the right PR research so that they knew what the right messages, the tone, the language that needed to be had and said. And if you often find that once that is done, there's more substance to a campaign that's being put in market once it has been done. I mean, I remember when the National Innovation and Science Agenda department came out, they put together this massive PR tender. And in the end, the government at the time decided under Turnbull that they didn't want to go ahead with a PR agency, which was worth about $400,000. It was a huge account. It was something around about that. And they didn't want to go ahead with it in the end because they preferred advertising so they could get better tracking in market from the research that they were doing to prove that it had worked, because eyeballs were seeing it across national TV screens.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, so, and a lot of people, and the result of that was a lot of people said, well, whatever happened to the National Innovation and Science Agenda? It's pretty much flopped, it's fallen over. And that is because a good PR strategy with implementation would have given a lot more substance to the different business sectors, the different innovation sectors, the different startup hubs, fintech, etc. Yeah. So PR is fundamental. You'll never have great success without it. It's here to stay, and so it should.
So one of the things that we find in today's terms is the fact that brands talk about brand story. And that's basically where PR plays a prominent role in the sense of telling those brand stories, because advertising just talks about the value or the price. So therefore, PR can really enhance the quality of what the company's all about.
Definitely.
Yes.
And just to add to what Carrington was saying, like, I think PR can, for so many brands, is often sort of an afterthought because they are so focused on their advertising and their media budgets, when in fact, you know, a consumer reads a piece of editorial that's written by a journalist who actually adores a product, or they've interviewed a spokesperson from a company. People are going to take that with more credibility than a TVC that they see in the evening on TV. So, yeah.
Look, I think one really cool thing that came out was the fact that if you're looking to start a new product, start the PR conversation early while you're developing that product. And I think there's also a story that comes out through the development of a product that people often miss. It's just the product at the end. But the story on the build, everybody's interested in how they get there, you know? And I think the other thing was even coming up with new products, talking to your PR agency, like doing that collab was awesome, or trying to figure out how to strategize what a new product could look like. Just stop talking. Yeah, so the bell there is very serious, you know, take it very serious. Yeah. We went through a bunch of different tones to find the most annoying ringing bell at the end of that tone. But no, I thought that was amazing, and I think what people often miss is they don't start the conversation early enough, or if they're stuck in a rut, they don't start the conversation to see what the other side might look like, you know, what they're not contemplating within their business, that a PR agency could go, well, you know, based on our experience or based on our knowledge, you could do something like this and pull these pieces together. And that's where you could find some extra value, you know? I think that was phenomenal. Grant, you got anything else you want to throw in?
Look, I think it's very important, you know, that in this discussion, there was a lot of talk about people preferring advertising over PR and PR over advertising. But I think what is very important is that it is imperative that part of your strategy, that whatever you're deciding from an advertising campaign, there's got to be a PR angle in it, in the sense that you've got to be embedding and you've got to be planting and you've got to be telling the story and you've got to be creating that new content, because there are so many platforms that are looking for information to edutain. There's that word again, edutain their customers. That we have to use that word in every single show, but at the same time, bring good PR as to the awareness of that campaign.
So I've got a question to kind of segue into the next question. Are you talking about a blended campaign? Like, would you recommend above the line, or, you know, a mixed or multi-channel advertising strategy along with your PR mix, or would you typically lean more towards organic, or is it really just campaign by campaign? How, because it kind of sounded, I don't want it to sound like that you're so digital averse that you're like, no ads, this is horrible. But you know what? Before you answer that question, I'll wrap it into the next question and then we'll hit the timer. Yeah. So the next question was actually about that. What is PR? What are the misconceptions around it, and how does it wrap into the digital space right now? Is it still relevant? And I think that kind of segues quite nicely into that question as well. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Is it multi-channel? How do you do the mix? How do you determine the mix? Ready to rumble?
Yeah, let's do
Let me
it.
try this again. I'm going to turn it because there we go. Who's going to kick it off?
Carrington.
Ladies first, always.
Carrington makes his job easy that way. He's just like, I'm out. So.
Well, I think to answer the question that you said earlier, I think integration is key. With any brand, it doesn't matter what type of brand it is. I think you need to be, looking at your advertising spend, looking at your PR, making sure it all ties in together. And as Grant said, that there's a news hook from the beginning. And then I guess sort of moving back into the original question around what the big misconceptions about PR is, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, to be honest. So I could go on, I'll keep it concise. But the one that always slightly frustrates me is I think there's a lot of confusion around what the actual difference between publicity and advertising actually is. I regularly find myself having to explain to potential clients that we haven't started working with yet what the actual difference is. No, you're not paying for that. It's part of our hours to generate that exposure, but also that they can't control exactly what the article says. I've had so many clients over the years ask me to ask a journalist to change an article, and it's just, you're like, it's not a paid ad. You don't have the control over it. They have editorial control. So that would be one. And then I think another misconception, there's a lot of people that are saying print media is dead because we've seen so many magazines sadly go under, particularly in the last 12 months. And whilst there's certainly been a move towards more digital platforms, you only have to look at the rise of social media over the last 10 years to see that. I still think print media has its place within a PR strategy. A really great example, our clients, Thanks to Nature, a few weeks ago had a piece in Body and Soul, which obviously runs in all the major metro newspapers on a Sunday. And they saw a huge uplift in sales that weekend. And whilst, no, they couldn't exactly track it back to a link or anything like that, they could see a clear increase in sales on their website. So it's obvious that that's where it's come from when that's the different activity that's been done. But as I said before, I think it's really important to make sure that you are hitting people from on different platforms. So, working with influencers, whether that's paid or on an unpaid basis with gifting, which is quite a big part of what we do, particularly for our clients behind me. But also making sure that you're getting that message out in the mainstream media, whether it's broadcast, print or digital.
Cool. Yeah,
cool. I think one thing that we always say is go where nowhere else is going. Like if where no one else is going, right? So if you're an industry that does, typically nobody in the industry does X, do X, because that way nobody else is going to be playing in that game. You're going to be the only one talking there. So I love the idea of the blended traditional and digital media. I think it's right along what we always talk about, Grant and myself as well. Carrington, weigh in, man.
Yeah, so for us, integration is campaigns for us. We offer advertising solutions, and we do that across the spectrum. More so below the line, which is more social media advertising for those who are watching that don't know, rather than TV advertising. Although on the odd occasion, we do TV advertising as well, just not as much as below the line. Below the line sometimes is obviously, clearly it is usually much more cost effective, but it's also sometimes more effective and beneficial to micro target audiences that are more specific to what the brand intention is or what the challenge might be. So yes, traditional is still very important as well. Having, as my agency does with my team, really good relationships with journalists to help nuance a story angle to tell that unique pitch. So that way we are trying to better media manage what the outcome might be is really paramount. And thankfully, with years of experience, as I'm sure Sophie has as well, we're able to help get the best results for our clients. It's very rare that we get that feedback where a client says, oh, can't you get the story changed? They usually come to us after the fact and says, oh, I've got this Google search where I have a story about us and I can't get the story changed. What can you do? That's when we say to them, oh, we can't really do anything about that. Sorry, but we can do search engine marketing ads. That might help. So to help obviously make that the first thing that appears in somebody's search on that brand or whatever it's about. So yes, integration for us is all about campaigns and how we can be that one-stop solution for our brands to tell that holistic story. That is what we certainly aim for. We know that by doing by providing a service for all of those marketing facets, we're able to give our clients the best results. And it's something that we're quite proud of here. And that's what we go out with. And it's what's made our agency tell a different story to the other PR agencies that are out there that we would probably compete with. And it's not just that we compete on price, it's just that we provide other solutions within that model that we provide.
Can I ask a question? Do you guys have to do your due diligence on a client too to make sure there's no skeletons in the closet? So when you're going out with a story, some editor doesn't poke around and then find something.
Always.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And it's better that you find it beforehand. Having done personal publicity for a few years, you want to know all the skeletons up front.
We're kind of like media lawyers in a way. So we're trying to make sure that our clients are being honest with us so that we can tell the stories to the journalists that need to be told honestly and in the right way.
And I think to add to that, it's really important that we know what the public as well as the media have previously said about that brand so we can be prepared for any questions or kind of make sure the messaging is right.
Absolutely. I've had a number of clients, potential clients, sorry, not current, potential, that have come to us who have said, look, we've had a crisis. We would like to talk about what we can do. And then they drag it out. They let the crisis unfold. And they said, oh, well, we had to come to you earlier. So there's no right time to go to a PR agency for crisis management. The time is always now. Get that planning and preparation in so that you can prepare and perform when that happens, so that you've got your, I hate to say this word, but it's always quite relevant, your playbook, so that's ready to go and roll out, so you know what to do if you're ever faced with that. It does happen, and a lot of brands sometimes just don't understand what to do. Sorry, I know what your hand movements are.
No, perfect.
No. You carry on talking. You carry on talking. Don't worry about us.
Back in the day, we wouldn't do anything, and then the buzzer would go off, and then we'd just continue talking for another like 2-3 minutes, and then be like, "We should probably move on to the next question now."
Yeah, I think the problem there was my voice is louder than the buzzer.
Yeah, you definitely outweighed the buzzer on that one. That was phenomenal. I really there was some great insight in there. I think that whole thing around crisis management, the fact that it's multi-channel, multidisciplinary, that you look at it across the board holistically, but also have to do the due diligence. And I think that's complicated. Like a lot of, even though there's so much information out there, there's some stuff that can get missed. So that's a very complicated little minefield that you guys have to navigate in order to make sure yourselves and your clients are protected, So
especially with social media.
Yeah, it'll turn on you so quickly that, then you've got yourself emergency PR before you know it. So therefore, you always want to have it well worked out.
Like, it's crazy. Like, businesses now will roll back, 2, 3, 4 years into your old Twitter feeds and stuff like that, just to see, you said this one thing, it doesn't align with us as a philosophy for, and that, even Disney has dropped actors or celebrities from their movies, etc., because there was a comment they made 4 years ago when they were a whole different mindset. They were 18 years old, 16 years, it's crazy. Yeah, social media really is a dangerous log of information.
Yeah, social media never dies. It's alive forever, and your competitors will use it against you with every chance they get.
And I guess that's the hard thing as well, right? Because one of the great things that I notice in kind of that PR space is standing for something. And I think that a lot of people steer away from standing for anything in case that impinges on something that they've either done historically or something that they talk about now. I think people are very adverse to kind of sticking their name to something they believe in,
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Agreed.
Well, I'm finding it interesting.
You got to. I mean, it's hard with cancel culture. It's just something that is really taking the world by storm over the last few years, and
What was that?
it's something as PR companies. Sorry.
What was that? Cancel culture?
Yeah. You don't know what that is?
No, explain.
How have you not heard of cancel culture?
I don't have a TV. I pay people to do my social media. I don't look at that stuff no more.
You were just describing it when say the woman, I can't remember the female actress's name, but the woman that was on The Mandalorian, and she was quite popular with the fans actually, and she said something, I think it was in support of something the Republican Party had said or something like that. And actually, I don't think it was that polemic, but it was enough for Disney to say, we don't want this, you're fired, as a result of the Twitterati, all the people on Twitter that just made all these trending hashtags. And the thing is, the dark web now, they know how to manipulate Twitter with the algorithm. They know how to get a story trending. We see it all the time in Victoria on Twitter with I Stand With Dan hashtags, which is probably bots from an organisation to try and support the Labor Party movement. We see that all the time, and it only takes a couple of hundred tweets for something to start becoming a trend on Twitter. And so a lot of these brands, they react quite quickly rather than standing up for their own people. So that's something that is really quite contentious right now.
Sure.
Sure. But I think on the other side of that, like brands also have to be so careful of who they align themselves with, because, if they've got someone fronting a campaign for them or something and they have said something that's set social media on fire and everyone's wanting to cancel them, then they do kind of have to extract themselves from the situation and sort of say, no, we don't agree with what was said.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. It's very complicated. It's almost like you're guilty until otherwise noted, like even with the Johnny Depp case, he was dropped from, I can't remember what production he was on. And then, that whole thing kind of rolled out the way it did. And it was before a decision was even made. It was just right at the beginning when the whole thing came out, then all of a sudden people are like, dropping everything. And maybe it's a Tiger Woods effect. Everyone's like worried, it'll get even worse as it goes on. So I'll just get out of there early rather than later, sooner rather than later. Awesome.
What's that saying? You're made by the media, you're brought down by the media. What's that saying? The media will make you, but they will also break you.
They can.
Yeah, but they also like a good reinvention story too.
That's true.
That is true.
Yeah. Bill Clinton.
Mate, look at him. He's got his PR hat on.
Come here.
Cool. We'll segue into the last question. You can't say segue and then segue into something. You either just say it. Yeah, anyway. The last question we have, what are the best platforms to present PR on? I guess it's a very broad question, really open-ended. Maybe more specifically, what is the criteria that you go after when you're picking a platform to publish content on? Hopefully that's not so big that we stretch it out for 40 minutes, but I'll hit the timer and you're ready to rumble?
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. I did it again. Can't do it blind.
One job.
Am I going first or?
I think that's the formula we've now hit.
I mean, I guess to answer your question, I think it's really essential to choose media outlets that are going to speak to your target audience. So, if a brand's wanting to target mums, for example, you're going to look at the likes of Mamma Mia, Kids Spot, and parenting titles to sort of hit that niche. But then the same goes also for influencer marketing. There's no point having, a hot bikini model plugging a beauty brand, for example, if say 60% of her audience are men, which often is the case with those kind of influencers, or, someone promoting a product that's only available for sale in Australia, but, 60 or 80% of their audience are in the US. So I think it all comes down to target audience as to kind of how you're going to work out your editorial strategy for a client, be that on social or traditional press. And And I think as well, we've sort of touched on this already, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it's also just important to make sure that you're kind of integrating across broadcast, print, social, digital, so that you are, hitting consumers in every aspect of their life. Kind of, I've read something online or I've seen it in an EDM, and then I've scrolled through my Instagram and I've seen an ad for it or a unpaid post even, so that you're constantly sort of raising that brand awareness.
Yeah, it kind of plants the seed and then it lets it grow with every touch point.
Totally.
Just a quick question on that. How do you do your due diligence? Like, on Instagram, obviously you could just scroll through their profile and be like, okay, most of these connections are men. That's not going to really work for our market. With publications and the like, how do you discern gender, demographic, etc.?
So most media, like for their advertisers, would have media kits. So we as a PR agency, even though we don't do a lot of media buys, we do some, but not many, we still gather those media kits. So we're looking at their audiences and we're understanding exactly the information that they would give to advertisers essentially. And then with influencers, there's a number of different platforms. We use The Right Fit, for example, which actually shows you the analytics of the talent up front. So you don't even have to reach out and ask them for it. But obviously if you're paying them for a campaign, it's kind of a bit of an obligation for them to send you screenshots of their analytics so that you can see, what are their top countries, what are their top cities, is it more men or is it more women, what kind of age brackets. And for a lot of our clients that obviously are alcohol, we have to make sure that the majority of their followers are over the age of 18, because otherwise we're going to run into some issues with our friends at ABAC.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Carrington, weigh in.
So I'm glad Sophie went first, because obviously she has very different clients and different audience that target, and you work a lot with influencers where we don't work with influencers as much. And for us, we have to constantly be on the ball with the right journalists. So we use, like with Sophie uses The Right Fit for influencers, we use Thom a lot for journalists. I'm sure you do too, Sophie, but for us, Thom is something that we are always in. And shout out to the guys at Thom, I'm sure they'll love that. But we cultivate lots of different media lists to target the right publishing outlets. So if we have a government department, say a health department, we would want to target all the different health publications or the different health journalists across the different mastheads being the big newspaper outlets across Australia. And we would want to look at ways in which we would provide exclusive stories to different journalists across different news companies. So we might want to give, say, an exclusive to the SMH or to the Daily Telegraph, depending on the audience that we want to target. And we can also uniquely style the story angle for the Daily Telegraph audiences as well as the SMH audience, which are very different and have different sets of audiences and demographics that people go and read their stories for. So for us, it's it always evolves and changes all the time, and it's always based on what the audience target is for the challenge that organisation or brand has.
How do you with an exclusive story, how do you kind of manage that? If you give it to one newspaper and they decide not to use it, do they have how does that work? Can you now present that to another news agency? The wind is it's very windy on my balcony. Can you present it to another agency? What's the responsibility of the original article now? How does that work? How does that play out?
Are you asking one of us in particular, or?
Just in general, Carrington, you mentioned exclusivity. How does that work in the exclusivity game? How do you make sure that a publication, if they turn it down, doesn't run it or whatever? How does that work?
I'm sure Sophie's probably thinking the same way I am right now. I'm hoping anyway. I'm not going to give too much away about that, but what I will say is that we find unique solutions to make it happen.
Definitely.
Okay? So we always try for exclusive.
And you also give yourself a little bit of a timeline. So say I've reached out to the AFR for a client and I wanted to give them an exclusive. I'll always put the date that press release is going out eventually, just so that they've got an idea that there's a bit of a timeline on this exclusive. And if I don't hear back from you, I'm going to go out far and wide, or alternatively, I'm going to offer it to your competitor.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And that's really good, especially in the consumer space that Sophie plays in, because you turn around stories very quickly. And for us, some of our clients, they're a bit longer. You know, we have a launch date, a campaign launch date. So we'll put things under embargo, which means the journalist has the media release, but they're not allowed to write about it yet until that launch day, right? That's what that means. So that can happen. Sometimes we'll do things like that where it's even if it's an exclusive, but usually if you've got a great relationship with a journalist, that's where it's key to getting the story outcome that you're looking for. That's why I try not to attack journalists too much on Twitter anymore. But yeah, so look, we always go for that exclusive, always.
And I think just to add to that, something that we really rely heavily on in the consumer space is a lot of what we do for our clients is sort of like expert articles where we write the whole article for the journalist.
Oh,
and that has exclusive content as well. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay, it's not a hard finish. It's just like get finished.
Yeah.
Just wrap it up. Just wrap it up. No, Grant, you wanted to jump in a couple times, and these two were just riffing off each other.
Yeah, I didn't get a word
Sorry.
Look, I think it's about that relationship that we spoke about in our first show, in the sense of having that relationship with the platform, with the media, in the sense of who they're appealing to, because everyone is always looking for fresh content or that content that is informative or keeps their publication relevant or platform relevant. So it is about just having that understanding and that relationship with the view that you can pull a favor sometimes, or sometimes you get a request, or sometimes he'll give you an understanding that it's not going to transpire within their platform, in their timeline. And then you know that you can go and look elsewhere. So it is about that relationship very much. But I think that the tips that both of you gave today are phenomenal for all of us in business, just to be able to put a few little things out going forward. I think the one thing that you guys did not mention is that press releases need to be kept short and sweet rather than long and long-winded, because they haven't got time to read it all.
And the same with pitch emails, you know, like you can't, and I think some people maybe make the mistake of trying to put all the info from the press release into the pitch email that's all being sent in the same email. And it's like, don't repeat yourself. And the journalist is going to read the first few sentences of your email and decide whether, or of the press release, and decide whether it's of interest to them. So it's important to like grab their attention immediately.
And the key to that is just pick up the bloody phone, like pick up the phone and talk to the journalist. They will respect you a lot more. They will build a relationship with you. I mean, that is something that I always learned in the media newsroom when I first started out as a cadet journalist all the way back in 1999. And I remember that was what all the journalists around me were saying, just pick up the phone, just pick up the phone. And that has been a great tip, because that is how you build those relationships to help better the outcome for your clients at the end of the day.
And it is easier to pitch a story on the phone than it is via email, because you can communicate so much easier, and you can explain what the story is going to look like so much clearer to them. Absolutely.
It makes everything much easier, especially when they then get that follow-up email from you explaining exactly everything that you've just been talking about.
Yeah.
Because it might sound like we're saying it right in our head when we're writing it down, but it always comes out clearer on the phone.
Yeah, agreed.
So you're telling me public relations has a lot to do with relationships? It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's
funny that.
It's amazing.
It's all relationships.
That's and you know what's really interesting about it as well is that as people are tending more and more towards the digital space, we're trying to connect more, but ever becoming more disconnected. And something like what you guys do with public relations is bringing that human element back into what people are connecting with. And to do that, it requires two humans talking, you know, like I think I'm making it very deep now, deep and meaningful, you know, but I think that's what it is, right? The media outlets that you're talking to are resonating because it's a piece that will connect with people. And in the end, that's what matters most. So I made you guys now sound like gods in the media world. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You did it yourself.
In our own lunch boxes.
Guys, that was a phenomenal show. Sophie, Carrington, do you want to add any last words before I throw it to Grant and we wrap this baby up? Shots for everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
Guys, happy Friday.
I'm going to get on a Negroni and try and celebrate lockdown. Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Try and celebrate lockdown.
What else can you
Yay,
do?
lockdown. Love you, lockdown.
Again,
Awesome. Grant, any last words? Want to wrap this up?
look, both of you, Carrington, Sophie, even Bernard, what a great discussion. What a great discussion. And the amount of diamonds that you guys threw out was incredible. But I think most of all, get back to the old school of just getting on the phone and having a conversation makes it a winner, makes all this other stuff come together. So I think you sewed it up so well. It is a tough show to talk on in the sense that you've got a clock to beat, but at the same time, we had 3 interesting questions, we had 3 interesting outcomes, we had 3 interesting guests. Once again, what a phenomenal show. So thank you so much for participating in Bite Size Branding.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Grant and Bernard. I really appreciate it. Nice to meet you, Sophie.
You too.
Right, this is one of my, this has been, I don't want to, I say this too often, so it's really irrelevant, but I absolutely love this show. Is that different? That's not saying it's my favorite, right? I love the mix. I like having multiple perspectives on the show, and I love it not being just me and Grant trying to unravel everything. So it was great having you both on here. It was great having slightly different perspectives from different angles of the market. I think it's so important to find people who really understand what you're doing as a business and then can take that and leverage it. And I think that's what we do as branders and marketers. That's the most important thing. Just one last thing. Sophie, if you gift me something from one of your clients, I'll tweet it for you.
Fabulous. I'll message you after and get your address so I can send you some like saintly seltzer or something.
I think we just did a good collab. What do you think?
There you go. Perfect.
They're PRing their own PR, like they're PRing in the PR conversation about PR.
If only you guys could see my spare room right now. It's literally filled with alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Doubling as a PR warehouse at the moment.
So Friday night at your place when lockdown is over.
100%.
Done.
Sounds
Clean
good,
up
guys.
crew. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us late on this Friday. Please enjoy the rest of your Friday. For everyone that watched the show, who liked, commented, thank you very much for coming along and joining in the conversation. We had quite a few people commenting, which is phenomenal. It was a great chat, great conversation. Everybody who is listening or has watched in the past, if there are other guests that you would like us to talk to, please introduce us. If there are particular topics that you would like us to unbundle, please let us know. And if you have to
be a guest on the show, let us know.
Sorry? Yeah, if you want to be a guest on the show. We're always looking for controversial topics. Give us something that's going to challenge us or challenge our guests to really unravel and see what's going on behind the scenes in this business. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a phenomenal Friday.
One more thing.
Grant.
Jackie Monroe said, countdown timer is such a good idea, keeping the intention of the session right on track. 100%. I think that is what the show is all about.
That's our girl right there. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for commenting.
That's just a bit of good PR there. She works for us.
I wasn't going to say anything, Carrington. You could have let that one slide under
full disclosure. We're very honest in the PR industry.
Is that a misnomer? Does that
insider trading?
It's a misnomer.
Awesome, guys. Thank you very much. For everyone watching, please enjoy your Fridays. Thank you for being a guest on the show, and we'll catch you at the next show. Have a good one. Bye.